الحمد لله الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. In the Matan of Zad al-Mustaqni', this is the book, right? And then we have Kutub, Kitab al-Tahara, Kitab al-Salah, Kitab al-Siyam, Kitab al-Hajj, under the Kitab of Salah. Sharia, and this is how we break it down, right? Under the Bab of the leading of Salah, Imam, right? Who leads Salah, who can, who cannot. We were now going past who is valid in leading and invalid in things. In that section, now we get to where you're praying behind somebody who either runs into a certain situation, and how did that affect the Salah of the Imam and the Ma'mun, the one who is praying behind the Imam, the Muqtadi. فقال المؤلف, the muallif says لا تصح خلف المحدث أو يعني, so this is the first thing, that Salah is not acceptable, it is not correct, it is invalid behind somebody in a state of hadath. Muhdathin here is a state of ritual impurity. I will explain inshallah. ولا متنجس, or somebody who has najasa on them. If the Imam has something impure on them. يعلم ذلك, if they are aware of that. فإن جهل, if they are unaware of that. هو والمأمون, that person and the one who is leading, right? Then the person behind, their salah is صحة للمأمون, it is correct for the one praying وحده, يعني just him, just the people praying behind. Okay, so let's get into some explanation. If we talk about salah behind somebody who is in a state of hadath, what's the state of hadath? There is two types of hadath, right? Akbar wal asghar. And that's why every bab builds on the next. Right? Every bab, every chapter builds on the next. So if you remember before in the Kitab al-Tahara, we talked about there is ritual impurity and then there is impurity itself, right? There is a state of being in a state of hadath, and then there is najasa. A Muslim can never be called najis. Al-kafir or najis. Like a Muslim can never be called najis. So if somebody does not have wudu, can they pray without wudu? No. But are they najis? No. They are in a state of hadath. And this is called hadath al-asghar. This is the smaller or the lighter state of impurity. And you're in a state of ritual impurity, as they say. Tayyib. Then there is major impurities, right? Or a major state of impurity. What is that? Hadath al-akbar. For example, a woman after the haid, before she has finished her ghusl. Yani her haid is finished, but she has not performed the ghusl yet. She is in a state of hadath al-akbar. Somebody whose nifas has ended, and again, if you don't know those words, watch the earlier lectures, right? But they haven't taken their ghusl yet. Somebody in a state of janaba, right? Whether it's through dream or anything else, but a state of janaba. So in that state, you are in a state of ritual impurity. You're not najis, but you are in a state of hadath. Hadath al-asghar, what does it require? Wudu. You perform wudu, now you're done. Hadath al-akbar, what does it require? Ghusl. You perform ghusl, then you get out of it. In place of it, you can do tayammum and things like this. We discussed this in the earlier durus. But if the imam is in such a state, then salah behind that imam is invalid. Tayyib. What about if somebody has najasa on them? Something najis, right? There is aynun najasa, like actual impurity. And then there is the hukman, right? We'll get into that inshallah. But for example, somebody is going and they're coming to lead the salah, and they, I don't know, stopped at a baseball game, right? And they had to go to the bathroom and they were trying to protect themselves, but they didn't realize it, and they got some human urine on their clothes, right? They didn't realize it. They come out of there, they would go straight to start leading salah. if they finish the salah and then they notice that they have urine on them, right? And there are people behind him that prayed. Now, so first two issues get to be. One is the state of hadith and the other is having najasa. Those are two different things. Now, if somebody realizes that they are in a state of najasa, but only after they had completed the salah, if they are in a state of hadith or they have najasa on them, either which way, now that salah is invalid. Now we're separating between two halat. One is when somebody is in a state of hadith and one in somebody who has najasa on them. But the hukam here is the same, which is the salah is batila. So the imam's salah is batila. What about the people that prayed behind the imam? Right? Here the qawl al-rajih, and there is a lot of khilaf between madhahib and within the different madhahib, and I was looking at some of the books of other madhahib as well. I've decided not to go into that here just because we need to try to make progress in the bab, inshallah. What is correct? From the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, in Sahih al-Bukhari, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, يَصَلُّونَ لَكُمْ, yani if there is an imam who prays for you, and he prays correctly, فَلَكُمْ, yani it is for all of you. وَأَنْ أَخْتَأَ, but if he makes mistakes, فَلَكُمْ وَعَلَيْهِمْ. Such a beautiful hadith. Like, look at how few words there are and how deep the meaning is, right? So here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if somebody prays, somebody leads you in the prayer, and they do it correctly, then it's for you and them. And they get the reward for leading the prayer and you get the reward for the prayer. But if they make mistakes, then for you, your salah is fine. But it is upon them. That responsibility is upon them. Okay? Now that's a very deep and beautiful, and it's on Bukhari, so there's no doubt to the authenticity or anything here. So what does that tell you? Let's say you're praying behind an imam and the imam makes some crazy mistakes and you don't even realize it. You're just praying behind the imam. Your reward is a full reward. And that's one of the beautiful things about making salah in jama'ah. But the imam is responsible for everybody's salah, and that's one of the very dangerous things of leading salah. Right? Some places people like to compete to lead salah. Like nowadays, somebody has a nice voice and somebody else comes in, they're like, oh, I want to get to it first, Because we want the praise of people, we are not worried about accountability in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, having said that, if you are the most qualified, it's your responsibility, you should lead salah. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I'm personally very careful about it. Why? Because imagine you're responsible not just for your salah and everybody behind you. Imagine those ai`immah, may Allah reward them, that lead the salah in the haram, in Mecca and Medina. How many people are behind them? Millions. Sometimes, like you're talking about Hajj and things, millions. And they are, inshallah, Allah will give them the ajr for doing it right, but if they make a mistake, they are responsible for millions of salawat. So, what is the first usul that we understand from this? Is that the ma'mun, the one who's praying behind the imam's mistakes are not upon them. Right? Now, I guess I don't want to jump ahead. So we'll get into it if you knew or not. This is talking about you did not realize that you were in such a state until the prayer had ended. Now, those people that do lead salawat, like ai`immah and masajid and khutbah, this knowledge is obligatory on them. If you don't have this knowledge, don't be leading salah, no matter how nice your voice is and all that. Why? Because this is what affects the validity of salah, whether it's valid or not. Right? So, now, if the imam leads the people, after completing the salah, realizes that he didn't have wudu. What does he do to the people that prayed behind him now? Nothing. Their salah is valid. Right? And there are many other adillah. But the two ahadith that in Sharh al-Kabir, which is the reorganized Al-Mughni, written on the Abab of Al-Muqni' by Shamsuddin al-Maqdisi. So, what they mentioned two athar, two additional evidences. One is from Uthman radiallahu anhu and one is from Umar radiallahu anhuma. May Allah be pleased with both of them. Where they led the salah and then realized that they had to repeat their salah, and they did not order the people to repeat, they only repeated it themselves. In Sharh al-Kabir, they didn't give the takhrij of it, but I looked it up and I found it in the Musannaf of Razzaq, and both of those narrations are sahih, they're authentic. Of course, we have the marfu' hadith from Bukhari as well, but this is just an additional evidence. So, now we have the base ruling that if the person praying behind the imam does not realize a difference in the salah, meaning they don't realize the imam is in a state of hadath or has some najasa, and completes the salah, their salah is valid. The imam's salah in this case would be invalid because they prayed in a state that they should not have. Okay? The imam has to repeat his own salah. The imam has to repeat their salah. But the people do not need to repeat their salah. Okay? Now, we're going to go into two subcategories. And this is not in the matan. This is from I'm collecting from different shuruh. One gets to be that if the imam has najasa on them, realizes it during salah. During salah realizes it, but continues the salah. This is not talking about a state of hadath right now, najasa. Right? What is the hukum for their salah? It's batila. Technically, everybody else's salah is batila as well, but if they didn't realize it, then he's responsible for everybody. See? Now, in that case, if the imam continued the salah, realizing that he had najasa, he is responsible for everybody's salah and he has to repeat his salah and make tawbah. It's a sin. Earlier, the case scenario was not sinful because the imam did not realize it until after salah. His salah was also invalid, but it was not sinful. Why? Because the imam didn't know, and Allah does not hold you accountable for that which you don't know. Right? But in this case scenario, the imam realizes that, oh man, when I was at the baseball game, I got urine on me, but he's embarrassed to leave salah or whatever, and he's like, oh, that other imam I don't like might try to take my place or something, right? So then he decides to go on with it anyway. Salah is invalid, and the sin of everybody's salah and his own salah is on his head. Right? May Allah protect us. What should the imam do in this case? There are 2-3 ways to fix the situation. One is, let's say he's making salah, and where the najasa is in such a place that he cannot take it off. Right? Let's say it's on his izar, he's not going to take off his izar in salah, right? So, unless he has some over it, but let's say he's just wearing an izar and a small qamis, and his awra would get exposed, he cannot take it off. Even a thobe like this, I cannot take it off in salah, it's too difficult, so salah is going to be messed up, right? So, here the imam should step away. Somebody else leads, the imam's salah is invalid, the people's salah is fine, because they didn't know. Somebody else will replace him. He should go, take off or clean the place of najasa and come back and join the salah from the beginning. Meaning, join the salah as if he's beginning the salah. Because that salah is now invalid. The other case scenario is that as soon as he realizes, he removes it. Right? He realizes it, he removes it. In that case, his salah is valid. Right? And the dalil for that is a hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was leading salah with shoes. And the Sahaba radiyallahu, they were praying with shoes on. Here Jibreel alayhi salam informed the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam that he had some najasa on his shoes. So during salah he took his shoes off. The people praying behind the imam, all of them, they took their shoes off as well. Why? Because they were obedient to the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After the salah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them, why did you take your shoes off? I mean, it's from the sunnah, it's fine to pray with shoes on. He said that the Sahaba, they said that because you took them off, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he explained to them that I took them off because I was informed. Now he did not break the salah and he did not repeat the salah and he did not order the salah to be repeated. So this is one case scenario. Are you guys getting this, or am I going over your heads? If it's going over your heads, watch the video later. The other case scenario is that if you were, and I'm giving you adillah, evidences, so you can know what you're upon, is upon evidences, but I'm not going deep. Otherwise, there are many evidence for each one of these masail. The other case scenario is, now this was about najasa, about hadath now. Okay? If during salah you realize you don't have wudu, or you're in a state of janaba, in a state of hadath al-akbar, right? Now, there are certain scenarios where, for example, you are out in jihad and it's very cold and you made tayammum. Right here, tayammum is your tahara for that time being. It's not itself tahara, because if you find water, then it's no longer applicable, but it is in place of tahara, so you're fine. But in a case like this where there is no such case scenario, you were coming for the masjid for Fajr and you were in a rush and you thought, I'll make wudu at the masjid. When you get to the masjid, you forget, you start leading salah. If you remembered after salah, we already discussed that case scenario, right? Now, during salah, you remember, I don't have wudu. It's not shak, like sometimes shaitan has waswas. It's not shak. You know for sure you did not make wudu, right? And again, don't want to go off subject here, but when you're asleep, your wudu is invalidated. So even if you have doubt whether you made it or not, in this case, you don't have wudu. But if you had wudu and you had doubt whether you broke it or not, then yaqeen is you had wudu, then you do not let the doubt affect you. You understand those case scenarios? Okay, good. Tayyib. So now during salah, you realize, I don't have wudu, or I'm in a state of hadath. What do? Here, if you continue salah, your salah is invalid, everybody else's sin is upon you, and you're sinful. Right? Because now, you know you don't have wudu, and you're leading people in salah. Many of the A'imma and Ulama even said to pray without wudu knowingly is kufr. Right? I'm not going to go into the khilaf and the adillah, but just to explain to you how important of an issue this is. Because you knowingly are doing an ibadah incorrectly, not concerned about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala na'udhu billah thinks about what your ibadah is, right? Something very simple, right? Khair. Now when you are praying and you realize you don't have wudu, what should you do? Step away. Somebody else steps up, they continue the salah. The people's salah is valid. Your salah is invalid. Do you make taslim? No taslim. Why no taslim? Because your salah is invalid. What are you making taslim from? Right? When you break your salah, in certain situations, you make taslim. Let's say you're praying and you see a child that's about to get hurt. Here you make taslim. Why? Because your salah is valid, but you have a valid reason to break your salah. Right? But if you're praying and you pass gas, may Allah protect us all, then your salah is invalid, there's no taslim. Right? So in the situation where you realize you do not have wudu, or you're in a state that requires ghusl, your salah is invalid, the people's salah is valid. Okay? So you step away, somebody else steps in, and they lead the salah. If you continue all the way to the end, everybody's salah is invalid, but you will be responsible for that sin. They will not have to repeat the salah, you would. May Allah protect us. Tayyib. If the people knew, right? If the people knew that the imam was in a state of hadath, or if they knew that the imam was in a state where he has najasa on them, in that case, and the imam knew and the people knew, right? In that case, everybody's salah is invalid, including the people behind the imam. Right? So for example, you're in another country and there's a Jabir, and a very powerful tyrant type of a leader, right? And he is going to go lead salah. And he has najasa on him, but he doesn't care somehow, right? And you see that he has najasa on him, but your fear of that tyrant is more than that of Allah, na'udhu billah, right? And you pray behind him anyway, your salah is invalid and his salah is invalid, right? What should you do if you realize the Imam is in a state? You should tell him. If you realize it. And if the Imam realizes it, they should stop the Salah. There is a lot more detailed masail, but we will continue the matan. And the imama of the leading the salah of the ummi or the illiterate person, and this is, what is the definition of illiterate here? Not somebody who cannot read or write. Right? Everything has its own istalahat. Everything has its own technical terminology. When we talk about the word ummi in this context, then it is somebody who cannot recite Surah Al-Fatiha with its basic ahkam. Okay? And we'll talk about some of them here in the matan, alhamdulillah. Even if they're PhDs, right? Illiterate here doesn't mean that they can't read or write. That is the general, in lugha, in language, there is a meaning. But here in istalah, in the technical terminology of fiqh, as used in this bab, the meaning is somebody who cannot recite Surah Al-Fatiha correctly. Tayyib, what aspects, for example, their idgham is not correct when you mix two letters together, they do it incorrectly, or they don't do idgham, right? For example, when you say Ar-Rahman, can you say Al-Rahman? Yeah. Some people, they do Al-Rahman. But here you have to skip, you have to make Ar-Rahman. Right? So if somebody is leading salah saying Al-Rahman, right? Now here, this is not acceptable. Imam Shafi'i, for example, even said that even if you miss the shadda, right? Or they change some of the letters. Right? Now there is some depth here because there is difference of makharij bain al-qira'at, between the different recitation. Sirat and zirat and so on, right? That is acceptable because that is the correct pronunciation within the ahruf al-sab'a, which then bring out the qira'at that we have. So that is unacceptable. But if somebody says al-khamdu, some countries they love to make the ha into a kha, al-khamdu, right? Then this is not acceptable. Here, there is no qira'at with that, right? Some of the qira'at, they don't have the hamza. Some of the qabail, they didn't have a hamza. They didn't have. They just made an alif. So that would be acceptable here. But when you are outside the qira'at and you change a letter completely, right? Sometimes your pronunciation of that letter may not be perfect. And we'll talk about that later. But that does not invalidate, even in Al-Fatiha. Right? But if you change the letter from one letter to the other, then that is not acceptable in Al-Fatiha. Tayyib. Or they make grammatical errors, right? That would either change or affect the meaning or like it. Something where it's going to have an effect on the meaning. What does that mean? If something is marfu', because this is the state of rafa', it gives you a meaning, you make it mansub. Now, if you do out of accident, no problem. Somebody corrects you, you correct yourself, we're good. But if somebody, that's how they recite. So, alhamdu, they say alhamda. Right? Here, without any reason for being mansub, a state of nasb, right? Then it is not permissible because it affects the meaning. Right? If you look at fa'il and maf'ul bihi, there's a big meaning difference. Right? And I give the example many a times. I was in Mauritius a long time ago. It was Ramadan. I was there for work and I went for Taraweeh. The brother, mashallah, was from South Africa. He was a young brother, had memorized the Quran, and he was leading the salah. And I was praying behind him, and he made a mistake about the khalq of samawat. Right? He made the samawat the khaliq. He put rafa on it, and this is not, it was not naib and al-fa'il and so on. Right? So I corrected him just from a grammatical perspective. and he continued with the mistake. I corrected him again. He did it the third time. I corrected him again. He kept going. I was like, okay, forget it, man. Right? So after Salah finished, because most of the people there didn't know any Quran, like they were very, just Am people. So he got upset, like, who was correcting me? Like, it was me. And then he's like, bring the mushaf, bring the mushaf. And then he saw that he was in a mistake. He told me, you're Hafid. I told him, no. He said, how did you know? I said, because I know that Allah created the samawat, right? The meaning changes. So when you make a grammatical error that affects the meaning in Al-Fatiha, then this makes it that you are ummi, you are illiterate here, according to this definition. And the salah behind such a person is not valid. Illa mithlihi. Except somebody else who's the same. And they also don't know how to recite it properly. Right? Because if you have 20 people and none of them can recite Al-Fatiha correctly, well, you don't have an option. You're not going to helicopter somebody in, right? If you can bring somebody who can, then khalas. But if none of them can, then khalas. We cannot put a burden upon them that they don't have. But even if one of them is able to, then that salah is invalid for all. That one should be put to leave. Right? Tayyib. And if the people are able to correct, or if the person is able to correct but continues to pray incorrectly in the other aspects of the salah, regarding grammar, right? So we have an illiterate person who could fix their salah but doesn't. Right? Then their salah is invalid altogether. Right? And this is Al-Fatiha, we're talking about Al-Fatiha. If somebody is praying behind somebody who could fix it but doesn't, but the people behind them have no ability to change the situation, then their salah would be valid if they did their best. Okay? I'll give you an example. If somebody goes to a masjid and you don't know the masjid, like you just stopped at a bus stop, and you start the salah behind the imam, and the imam makes mistakes in the recitation that could change the meaning, right? Here now, the person, if he has no ability to change the imam, and he corrects the imam, he does his best, right? And the imam continues, here your salah is valid. Because that's not your masjid, and you have no ability, and you tried your best. If that person has the ability to correct the imam and doesn't, then your salah is also invalid. Okay? If it is your masjid and you have the ability that you correct the imam when the issue is in Al-Fatiha, and the issue is serious enough to invalidate the salah, then your salah is invalid. Because you are knowingly praying behind somebody like this, right? And you have the ability to change it. If you are not capable, then Allah does not put upon you more than you can bear. Now, like I said, if somebody, this is talking about a mistake in Al-Fatiha that would affect the meaning, that would be major enough that you change the letter or you change the idgham, not about mudud, not about how beautiful your makharij are or not. That does not affect the validity of salah. In the rest of the Quran, some mudud will, because it changes meanings, but that is not going to affect the validity of your salah. Right? Past that, it is disliked, mutlaqan, overall, to pray behind an imam that makes a lot of grammatical errors. Right? Now we're talking about past Al-Fatiha. And we're not talking about pronunciation, we're talking about grammar. Most people, when they don't know fiqh, they are more worried about the imam's beautiful voice. Right? This is how awam are. Like an imam will destroy the mudud of a surah and will destroy the makharij to make themselves sound nice, and people are like, wow, I love that guy. We put that guy. No beard, no problem. Doesn't makes his bad, no problem. I like his voice. Your salah is going to be invalid. I like his voice. All right. Right? This is unfortunately the state we're in. And then the people that are a little bit more knowledgeable will be concerned about some of the makharij. They will be concerned about some of the ahkam of tajweed. But even most of them will be very oblivious to the grammatical errors. They will not be worried about mansoob and marfu' and majroor. Okay? But in fiqh, we are most concerned about that. Again, we're talking about outside Al-Fatiha. Because outside of Al-Fatiha, the other mistakes will not invalidate your salah, because only Al-Fatiha is a rukn from the qira'at of Quran in salah. Outside of that, it's not. But the grammatical errors can have effect. Right? Because sometimes the error will change the meaning to a bad meaning. Right? خَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَوَاتِ. For example, if I said it like that, it means Allah created the skies. If I said Allah خَلَقَ السَّمَوَاتُ, right? Here, even in this format, na'udhu billah, you're saying the skies created Allah. Because you made this maf'ul bih and you made that the fa'il. In Arabic, you can change it doesn't have to be in order. It has to be the i'rab that tells you who is the fa'il and who is the maf'ul. Who is the one that did the action and who is the one that was affected. Right? So here, even outside of Al-Fatiha, if somebody makes continuous grammatical mistakes, it is disliked, makruh, to pray behind them, even if we're not talking about we're not talking about the validity of salah. Because if their Fatiha is correct and their mistakes outside Al-Fatiha do not make a meaning that is so inherently wrong, then the salah will be correct. Even if they have issues with makharij, even if they have other slips and things, even if they make a lot of mistakes and forget ayat and things, your salah is valid. But a mistake like that in Al-Fatiha will invalidate your salah. And outside of Al-Fatiha, if it has enough of an effect on meaning, could invalidate your salah as well. Tayyib. The same is then we say about those that have other issues regarding recitation. Right? If there are other issues, somebody who continuously mispronounces letters, somebody who continuously messes up the mudud and things without affecting the meaning but still does, then there is karah. There is a disliked state, but the salah is valid here. Tayyib. Next we go into a person leading an ajnabiyya, a woman who is not mahram to him, and he and her are praying by themselves. This is something where there is, depending on the situation, karaha or tahreem. Right? If they are praying in a closed room by themselves, then khalwa by itself has tahreem in it, it's haram. But if they are opening, like, let's say you're at San Diego State University and you're about to make salah, and some sister you don't know comes up to you and says, brother, you're going to lead salah, let me pray behind you. Now here you're in an open courtyard, so this is not under tahreem, but there is still karaha. It is still disliked. And even if there is 2 or 3 or 4 women, but they are ajnabiyya, they are not mahram to you, and there are no other men with you. In those cases, it's still karaha, there's still dislike, even if it's not khalwa. Okay? But now there is a different scenario. What if you are at San Diego State and you and a few brothers are going to make salah, and some sisters are there and they see you and they pray behind you? Nothing wrong with that, because you're not alone with them. If you are in a room and there are other brothers and some sisters come to make salah, this again, because this is not considered khalwa, even if we can discuss about if it's a closed room and whether they're mahram and all that kind of stuff. But here we have a different case scenario. Now in a masjid, what if the imam comes and only one woman comes? This is perfectly fine, because this is not, first thing, this is not alone. Right? Here, for example, in our masjid, the women are in a separate area. Right? So here the imam is not alone with the woman. And it's a masjid, it's a regular place of salah. So the imam goes and leads salah no matter what. Now, in some of the masajid nowadays, they have put the masjid where, mashallah, they have like a huge property. I'm not mentioning any particular examples, just a general statement. And they have huge parking lots, and they have empty areas that they've bought for millions of dollars in very nice neighborhoods. And they have really nice playgrounds, and they have tons of clouds, but the musalla is really small. And there's only one musalla for men and women. Even though they have this huge place. I don't know what happened, the design kind of fell apart, right? Where the recreation rooms are a lot, and the musalla is small. Comparatively small. And here, I mean, even though they were like, oh, in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was only one musalla. Yes, but there were some checks and balances in place, right? For example, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not allow men and women to go from the same door. He made Bab al-Nisa. Till today, you go to Masjid Nabawi, there is Bab al-Nisa. Women had their own door. They didn't go through the same door. In some of these masajid, and I'm not talking about anybody in particular, they lock every other door. They'll keep only one door open, so men and women both have to go through that door for some odd reason, right? And what happens here now is they say, oh, in the time of Rasulullah, where was the partition? Okay, there was also no roof. Why'd you put a roof? Let's get some palm fibers and put them up there. No lighting. Well, why don't we get chandeliers up in here, right? There was no marble. There weren't any classrooms and game rooms and all that either. So it's funny, that's the only thing you remember, right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then ordered that the men stay after salah and make adhkar and women leave first. You're going to do that too? Right? Aisha radiyallahu anha says the women would come for salah and leave without being recognized. Their hijab was so good, you couldn't recognize them. You're going to make sure of that as well? Right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said if the woman put the perfume, don't come to the masjid. You're going to say that in your community center? Not going to mention any names or anything. Right? You're going to do that? No? Oh, that you just remember the part without the partition, right? All of the rest, your selective amnesia hits in. So in that type of scenario, you might get a scenario where again there will be kiraha even in the masjid, because now you have other rooms, you have the ability, but you're putting a man and sometimes just a woman in one closed confined area, which is the musalla, the smallest room anyway. So these scenarios have to be understood. And the Sharia has safeguards for reasons. Khalwa is tahreeman, I mean there is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hadith Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu mentioned marfu'an from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imam Ahmad al-Nisa'i, Ibn Majah, Ibn Hibban have all reported and authenticated it, where he said that if there is a man and a woman together, khalwa, and alone, the third is shaitan. Right? And people today are overconfident in their iman. And today, like, oh no, not me. I can drive Uber with a good-looking woman and it doesn't affect me. Oh, mashallah, your iman is so strong, right? You are somehow guaranteed protection. Right? No, why do you want to test yourself? Why do you want to put yourself in that situation? Shaitan plays tricks. And anyway, so the next mas'ala is if the imam is hated by most of the people. Right? Now, the muallif here mentions أو قوما أكثرهم يكره بحق with a valid reason. Right? Maybe you come to a masjid and you are on the sunnah. You are on the Quran and sunnah and the way of the Salaf of the Ummah, and most of the people are people of bid'ah, and they hate you because you're on the sunnah. Khalas, there's no karaha here. You should lead the salah. Nothing wrong with that, right? Because it's not bihaqqin. It's not on the truth, right? But let's say somebody's got horrible manners, and they maybe, may Allah protect us, maybe they chew gut and then put niswar, and I'm picking on different cultures here, so don't get offended, right? And smoke and eat garlic and onions, and then come to the masjid like that, and their mouth just blah, right? And now everybody's like, man, the whole masjid stinks, man. It smells like cigarettes in here, and like what's going on, right? And then the Imam hangs out outside the masjid. I've seen this, unfortunately. I was in South America as Imam came. Beautiful salah, beautiful Quran, recitation like you wouldn't believe. In one surah, went through 7 qira'at, amazing, sitting down. No beard and things, but that's the country they were from. Anyway, so everything. And then right after salah, in Taraweeh, he went outside, lit up a cigarette, started telling dirty jokes. Like, what the heck, right? SubhanAllah, he just, right? Does not compute, right? But this happens. So in that type of situation, if the majority of the people dislike the Imam for a valid reason, then this is makruh. There's karaha for that Imam to lead, right? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best of you are those that the people make dua for, and the one who leads them, and he makes dua for them, and the worst are those that he makes dua against them and they make dua against him. So looking at this, there is karaha. Then it can go to a higher degree. Maybe he's a mubtadi', maybe he's a fasiq, right? And then the hukm of fiqh we talked about earlier, cigarette would make him fasiq as well, and gut and some not onions and things, that would be karaha. So you can look at those rulings in the earlier durus, we already covered those. But that could be makruh or haram, salah behind such a person, depending. وتصحيح إمامة الولد الزنا. It is if somebody is born out of wedlock, right? Somebody who was born out of wedlock, meaning the parents were not married. This is called walad al-zina, right? That type of a person to lead salah is valid. Or somebody's personal, jundi here, but the meaning is somebody who is your personal servant, right? Somebody who is a lower level than what you would see the rest of the people being, right? But in all those cases, the salah is valid as long as salima dinuhuma. If both of these cases, the deen is protected. So if somebody is born out of zina, it's not their fault. Right? They didn't do anything. The parents, whatever, did something wrong. So if their deen is correct, if they are salihin, if they are pious themselves, no problem with praying behind them. Not makruh, not haram. Right? If somebody is of a lower social status, they're indentured servant. We talked about slaves and stuff already, but indentured servants, that doesn't matter. As long as the deen is good, no problem with that. In Islam, we don't have classism. We don't separate between classes. And many of the great a'imma and ulama were al-mawla. They were freed slaves, like Nafi' and Hamran and others, right? And many other, Yahya bin Ma'in and others, they were on a very low social status from the people's perspective, but not in the religion. In the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't have classism. Tayyib, inshallah, we'll stop here and we'll continue with this bab, inshallah ta'ala, in the next dars.